Episode 23 of To the Unknown Pod. We are glad to have you here. My name is Jordan Bush. I'm the executive director of TGFB Media, which exists to help Christians understand and use Bitcoin for the glory of God and the good of people everywhere. Today, we are joined by a couple fine mountainous presbys who I will allow to introduce themselves now.
I'm Tim Fox, executive director of the Magnolia Foundation, working on orange pilling the church.
And I'm Jim McAndrew at Magnolia with Tim. I'm also an entrepreneur and run a little software company called DroneLink.
And we are here for episode 23. Can you believe it, guys? 23 episodes. We're missing Oshawa, our Portland-bound friend. Who knows what he's doing? Something along the lines of celebrating his daughter's birthday.
He's getting ice cream or something.
Again, these guys who we're working with have way too good priorities. So we are here though to discuss boomers ruin everything. This is not a statement. This is a question. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of energy, a lot of hostility on the Twitter webs. I almost said en cuanto de, because my mind went to Spanish. As it relates to the boomers and their role in the economy being in the state that it's in their role in politics being in the situation that it's in. So what we want to do is we kind of want to examine this claim. Can we really is it really just so neat and clean that we can just blame everything wrong with the world on boomers? That certainly is a take. So we're going to start basically to kind of prime the pump on this discussion. We want to look at Charlie Kirk, not a friend of the program, would be open to being friends with Charlie should he be interested. Would love to have him on and chat about these things more. But he went on this other tiny little podcast called Tucker Carlson's podcast, and he just talks about this little rant about the boomers, and he's calling them repulsive. So let's just watch the first 40 seconds or so of this and see what he has to say here. Let me share this, and here we go. Of course, this takes way longer.
It's like this inherent contradiction. We're super wealthy on one side, like a powerhouse juggernaut, and we are like an economic nightmare on the other side. How did that happen? Answer: the wealth went to older people at the expense of the next generation.
That's for sure.
Every single economic growth decision of the last 30 years has been made. I am going to benefit. My baby boomer generation is going to benefit. And I don't care if it hurts young people. And I'm not anti-boomer. I get negative hate mail all the time because the boomers are super protective of their generation, as if I'm like attacking Presbyterians or something.
They're repulsive.
Whoa.
They've always been repulsive. I grew up in a world. I was born in 1969. The baby boom ended in 1965. So
that's basically it.
Okay. Well, let me just finish this. I want to hear
64. Whatever. It was just a post-war generation, ended mid-60s. I'm not a boomer. Thank heaven. My father was not a boomer. He was born in 1941.
Silent.
Totally different attitudes,
Silent.
right? He was born before the second.
All right, we'll just stop there. Wow, that got elevated, or that what's the phrase? That elevated quickly.
Escalated.
Escalated. That's the word. Yeah, that escalated quickly. What do we think about this, guys? We'll let Tim, noted giver of the measured takes. We'll let Tim give his opinion first here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simplistic diagnosis of a very serious problem. It's the boomers. It's just because boomers got rich. And it's like, well, that's true, I think, of a lot of people, but there's a lot of boomers who did not benefit from the economic system that we've had, the military political system we've had the last 50 years. There's a lot of boomers who suffered and are suffering under it, who have, overdosed on opioids or whatever, committed suicide. And it's like, I don't know, I'm a millennial, and, I like to bemoan my own generation. I mean, there's almost nothing more human than bemoaning how bad things are and how much better it used to be. And there's nothing really new about that. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's like, well, as much as there's a lot of things I don't like about millennials, it's like, well, who raised them? Well, the boomers. But also it's like the boomers didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, this isn't like, oh, we went on the fiat standard in 1971, and before that everything was wonderful and everything was great. Well, no, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on philosophically and culturally and politically and theologically way before that, decades and decades, arguably centuries before that. And so I don't know, it's easy to blame them. I get a little worried sometimes about kind of resentment and envy and kind of looking for other people to blame. But yeah, that's not to say there are a lot of issues and a lot of problems. Aaron Wrenn recently has been talking in some of his newsletters about kind of boomer mentality and basically saying, stop whining so much about the boomers and how much cultural power they've had. Learn to be more like the boomers. And, one of the characteristics of the boomers is they didn't care what people before them thought. They were willing to buck the trends. And he's saying this about evangelical boomers. And he had one the other day where he was talking about kind of evangelical complementarian theology about men and women and gender roles. They explicitly said, John Piper and Wayne Grudem explicitly said in their book about complementarianism that we're rejecting traditional Christian patriarchy. We're doing something new and something different. And one of Aaron Rand's points, and this may go with what Charlie Kirk is saying, is he said, now when you come around and you criticize the boomers like they did to the generations before them, they get really uptight and really defensive. And they say, well, you can't criticize us. This is just the way things are. And so Aaron Rand is saying we need to be the same way towards the boomers that they were towards generations that came before them. And but also, too, I think part of his point is, don't be so stressed out and so resentful and try to blame everybody else. You can just do things. You can try new things.
Go for it, Jim.
I mean, my take is I don't think millennials or Gen Z or any other generation having been born at that same time frame would have been any different. So
100%.
that doesn't make any sense just at face value. But then also, as Bitcoiners, and again, I'm not saying fiat is the problem behind everything. Obviously, the real problem behind everything is our sin nature. But fiat just makes it that much easier for us to give ourselves over to our sin nature. And yeah, if the boomers are in charge of the big red button that lets them print and they're the asset owners, then of course they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries. And we would have been had we been born at the same time. And so to me, this is just classic blaming kind of the symptom as opposed to the disease. The disease is fiat. The symptom is like the class and generational warfare that fiat causes, right? And so they want us to blame each other. They want the generations to be mad at each other because it keeps us mad at each other instead of mad at the people that are pressing the red button.
Who's they, Jim? Who is this they? This is
It's the shadowy people behind the curtain that are causing the money printing to occur.
The man.
But having said all of that, this is just setting up the very next thing. Okay, so what's interesting about millennials, and maybe it's a little bit more true of millennials than even Gen X, because Gen X had enough of a foot kind of in the old world that they can't quite wrap their head around Bitcoin. But millennial is kind of in this Goldilocks zone where we are digital natives enough to be able to understand Bitcoin, but we're old enough to actually have a few assets to our names. And I'm not saying all millennials do. Yes, there's a lot of millennials that can't afford to buy a house and things like that. But there are certain millennials that understand Bitcoin and have enough money to put into it. And if Bitcoin ends up becoming the new monetary standard, that set of millennials is going to become fabulously wealthy. And the Gen Zers and below after them are going to look up to the millennials with the same level, if not more resentment than we currently look up to the boomers with. And so if you dish it, get ready to take it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many scriptures we could quote. Again, this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up was just with the measure that you use to judge others, like God will use to judge you. Like this is something that a principle that's talked about. And again, I was thinking the exact same thing, Jim. Like there is absolutely no part of me that in any way thinks that if the millennials were in the situation where they're presented with the choice to push the button and get bailed out, to push the button and get all the benefits of this, that they would do anything different. Because like really, if we're going to get down to the disease is a disease of me. It's a disease for short-term, convenience to immediate convenience to you. Everyone else be damned. Everyone else's consequences be damned. And this is really an infantile way of looking at the world. Like this is, there are ways in which we're commended and commanded to be like children. Jesus says, unless you become like a child, you can't inherit the kingdom. So like there are ways in which we ought to aspire to childlikeness, but this type of childlikeness is not that. this type of again, like blaming everyone else for your problems, refusing to take responsibility, refusing to, I mean, just be able to consider if there's actually truth in some of the criticisms that are being levied against them. So I think that's one thing. The other thing that I would want to say, and again, maybe we can just kind of, maybe I'll just wait. I'll wait to bring that up. But
I was going to say, if you play the clip a little bit further, not that we have to, but Tucker kind of makes this assertion that the boomers are uniquely selfish as a generation. And again, I think that it's a little bit relative here, right? Because it's a question of like what type of selfishness. I think the boomers grew up in this world where it was like 1960s Mad Men, and everybody was targeting selling to the boomers because they were the biggest generation. So they had to, all the products and services had to be tailored towards that because that's where the whole population was. And so boomers kind of got this big ego about themselves and thought that everybody should be servicing them. And there is a type of selfishness to that, but I mean, look at our generation and below. We're sitting here posting TikToks, and everybody wants to be TikTok famous, and they're posting selfies of themselves. I mean, our generations are just as self-absorbed. It's just we don't have the stuff to be self-absorbed with ourselves with.
Yeah, we do and we don't, right? Because again, you just referenced the fact that people are able to make livings literally just hanging out on their phone all day and like recording themselves doing banal tasks like that. It really is. I mean, there is a truthfulness. There is a truthfulness to like the generational trust fund kid thing that is true of the boomers to a degree. Like that is true. I do want to raise. I think Mark Moss shared this tweet. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, it was in response to the.
Yeah, and I think this
response.
is again helpful to keep our pump the brakes here. Yeah, boomers had it easy.
Can you make that a little bigger? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Boomers had it easy, except for being drafted to the Vietnam Wars, fears of Cold War and nuclear fallout, civil unrest of the civil rights movements, gas and food shortages in the 70s, and globalization came online and took jobs. But they had it easy because, sure, money printing inflation pushed asset prices so high. And what do you think people will continue? What do people think will continue to happen for the next 10 to 20 years when presumably the boomers are out of the way? I think this is a fair criticism. And again, there are grievance merchants. There are people who, for the sake of building up their YouTube channels or selling books or pumping their own personal brands, are going and ours just shilling grievances, trying to convince people to rally around them as thought leaders or whatever. And so you ought to be suspicious. You ought to be suspicious when you hear somebody saying thing that sounds good, that makes you feel good. You ought to be asking yourself, why are they doing this? What do they have to gain from saying these things? It doesn't even mean that necessarily they're not true, but like, what do they have to gain by peddling what they're peddling? And so, this type of thing, again, these guys are, I would imagine based on what I know, two of the better actors, all things considered, but still, this is like catnip for a lot of people. And, calling them, whatever Tucker said, they're despicable. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. So when my dad watches this takes for you, Dad. I think, having boomer parents, my parents were some of the most generous, selfless, Christ-fearing, God-honoring people that I know. So this one's for you, Dad.
Well, amen. Like, I think that's a really, again, it's painting with a broad brush in this particular case, I feel like is specifically, not helpful. The other issue, let's see, how far are we in? We're 15 minutes in. Good. So the other thing I think that the other topic that we could talk about in this context, Tim, that I'd love to kind of get your perspective on specifically, because like one of the things that I'm thinking about here is just the relationship of like federal headship. Okay, this is a big topic in like reform circles, of like people talk about this and. But I really do think in this particular case, it really is it's germane. It's something that we ought to talk about, because yes, there is a sense in which the like baby boomers have benefited, but at the end of the day, the levers that were pulled that made these policies happen. I mean, you're talking about a couple key levers that were enacted, or a couple of policies that were passed that literally did the lion's share of the work for producing the end result that we see here. So I'm thinking of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which is before the baby boomers. We can't quite pin that one on them. But when that thing goes down, you have a handful of people who are behind it saying we want to do this. Then you have obviously the people who are in Congress or Senate, whatever, who actually vote on this thing and pass it. But like so much of what we see is just baked into the cake that was, the ingredients were mixed back in 1913. And so at the end of the day, it's just like, what were they actually going to do? Like, what were baby boomers actually going to do that was going to meaningfully change much of what's going on? I don't think there's really a ton, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's we were talking before we hit record about these couple of verses in Ezekiel 18, Jeremiah 31, where God is kind of chastising the Israelites as they have gone off into exile after many centuries of accumulated rebellion and disobedience against God. And God finally says, that's it. You're going into exile like I promised. And so at the time, the Israelites are suffering for all kinds of things that their ancestors have done in many ways. And so they start saying this proverb. They say, well, the fathers have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. And they're all resentful towards what their fathers did wrong, and we have to suffer the consequences. And in both Jeremiah and Ezekiel, God says, hey, stop saying that. No one's allowed to say this anymore. He says, everyone's going to die for their own sins. This is how it works. And part of the point is that you children today suffering the exile who want to blame your ancestors for what's happening to you, you have plenty of sin to go around. And you have no excuse to say, well, I'm innocent. I don't deserve any of this. On the other hand, there is a complementary point that Scripture makes about how humans are all in the same boat. We are in Adam's boat, and when Adam sinned, everybody sinned. And because Adam rebelled against God, we are all born sinful, and we all suffer because of it. And a lot of people don't like that about Christianity. They don't like that about Scripture. That's offensive to a lot of people. But it's, like Chesterton said, this is one of the most obvious things of Christian theology out there. You read this in the newspaper every day. Why are people so messed up from such a young age? Why do we all have this bent towards really terrible things? And so, yeah, there is this element of you suffer because of what your ancestors did, especially Adam. And there's elements of that too, and kind of, say closer to our own day. God says in Deuteronomy, he punishes sin to the third and fourth generation. Does that mean that I'm being innocently punished because of what my great-grandparents did? No. It means that sin has lots of consequences that last for many generations, and we all know that, and we all see that in our own families and in our own family stories. You see these things percolate down through the generations and get repeated. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Bavinck has this great part. He's a theologian I like a lot, where he's talking about this doctrine of original sin, that we inherit Adam's guilt. And he's talking about how, this is 100 years ago, he's saying, yeah, people don't like this. They get offended by this. And so he says, we have no problem with inheriting good things from our ancestors and from our parents. He says, we don't care if they want to give us money. We don't care if we pick up their talents. We don't care if we have a house to live in. We have a great, family. But when it comes to things like guilt and sin and suffering, we say, oh, it's so unjust. It's so unrighteous. How dare they pass this on to me? And Bavinck says it's just as unrighteous and unjust for them to give you good things as to give you bad things. And you have no right to complain about bad stuff, but happily take the good stuff. And, I'm sure a lot of millennials will be very happy to take lots of things from their boomer parents and inherit lots of money.
Yeah.
But have you earned that any more than you haven't earned the other stuff? So I don't know. I think you got to be careful. It's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways.
Yeah. Brings to mind Job 2:10, where Job's wife's, Job endures the loss of all these things, loss of kids, loss of wealth, loss of animals, all this kind of stuff. And his wife basically tells him to curse God and die. And he says to her, you speak as one of the foolish women. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? I think that's kind of what you're getting at. The other one that came to mind, the other verse is Ecclesiastes 7:10, where he basically says, do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it's not wise to ask such questions. And basically it's an oversimplification to act like, the past was so much better than the situation we find ourselves in now. And that was written thousands of years ago. This same temptation was faced by other people. And I think that's a big part of I mean, there's 100 senses in which that's true, where, there's another verse in the Old Testament where it talks about God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. I think, I mean, on the one hand, modern people, whether they're boomers, millennial, whatever, like we have access to more information than anybody has ever had in the history of the world. And yet that proximity has not, resulted in us actually being smarter or wiser people necessarily. We actually are very ignorant of the way that things have worked throughout time. There's 100 ways in which we don't see the world accurately. We think that so many of these problems that we're facing, like the differences between generations, like as if this is something novel, as if this is something new, where we're uniquely to be pitied, and uniquely in a position to lament our situation in a way that other people weren't. Like it's just laughable. It's genuinely ridiculous by any kind of historical measure to act like we have a worse situation. We have the worst situation ever. It's bonkers. Just absolutely insane.
Tim's coming back. He's just doing that dad thing.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw the little hand.
The little hand. We can go to the next one though.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going here. Let's see. This is Martin Scold. We'll see how scolding Martin is towards. Here we go. All right. So Eigenrobot has this to say: do boomers realize they're still mostly going to be alive when we soft default in like 5 to 15 years? Thinking about this a lot lately. What's their strategy here? Oh, shoot. Let's go back. Oh, no. Do not get whatever this card is.
This is not an endorsement.
This is not an endorsement, not a paid ad. Most don't have a plan, but the ones who realize it are dimly aware that first point, their benefits mostly track inflation via cost of living, negotiated Medicare fees, etc. Inflation drives stock and real estate up. Jim.
Yeah, exactly. That is the plan. The plan has been the same as it was for the last 50 years. They're just going to keep printing money and their asset prices are going to keep pumping. So like we've been soft defaulting ever since at least 1971, but like you said, all the way back to 1913.
Yeah.
So that is the plan. Inflation is the plan.
Yeah, and continuing to hold scarce assets is the plan. And even if those assets don't perform as well as something like Bitcoin, they're still going to perform better than the, more and more debasing dollar. So they're going to be in a better situation than most.
Maybe the question here is when he says 5 to 15 years, is he saying this is the suddenly part of gradually then suddenly? Because other takes like Pierre Rochard will say that this is probably, I mean, he's famously kind of said when he first kind of learned about Bitcoin and got into it in 2013, he was like, oh, we're 6 months out. Like hyper Bitcoinization's like 6 months out. And now he's kind of like, no, it's probably more like 6 decades out,
Yeah, that is how it goes. Immanentizing the economic eschaton and destruction of the United States, like that. If there's maybe people who don't understand that phrase, so immanentizing the eschaton is basically you're saying, hey, the end of the world is happening in my time. Basically every generation thinks that the end of the world is happening in their time at some point or another. You have like World War II, they go through the Holocaust, like all these different things. They go through watching more people die in the span of 5 years than have ever died in the history of humanity. And so they think that the end is near. There was tons of fervor about that. And a similar point can be made about Bitcoin in terms of just the more limited scope of the decline of the global fiat monopolies all over the world. It seems like, man, you see their doom is sure, and so you're like, well, I mean, I get this right now, so surely everyone is gonna wake up to this reality within the next 6 months or the next 4 years or 15 years, whatever it is. And in reality, it generally speaking takes a lot longer than that for these things to roll over, just because of the sheer scale and a whole hundred other factors.
I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad's prophecy book that was all about the boomers starting to retire in 2012. And so therefore the massive amount of drawdown that was going to happen from them taking their retirement funds and living off of them was going to cause a massive crash. And it just hasn't happened.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like the Fed's not going to let it happen. Essentially, they're just going to print money until the cows come home to prop everything up.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you don't have to sell all your stuff at once. You can just continue to take out, like every month, just take out some and, leave the vast majority of your, your dragon treasure hoard, there in assets and, stocks. And all that
I think it's pretty clear that at this point, given what happened in 2008 and what happened in COVID, and even just like minor things like Trump's tariffs, the tariff tantrum, and then the flash crash in April, and then it just comes right back in. It's like we're in a new, basically since 2008, we're in a new monetary order where it's like the Fed just says we're just gonna go money printer burr on anything because you cannot let the prices deflate. I mean, this is Jeff Booth's whole deal, which if you haven't watched his latest episode on what Bitcoin did, it's not anything new if you've read his book and stuff like that, but it's basically just like we live in an inflationary economy, and if any deflation at all happens, the whole thing falls apart. And so they know that, and they won't let it happen. They'll just, so I guess in defense of this original tweet, this is the soft default.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't taper a Ponzi, to quote one of our own prophets. This is one of these things they can't slow this thing down. To quote Lynn Alden, nothing stops this train. Another one of our prophets. This is just you can't. They can't. This is why. This affects real estate interest policy. All these things that Trump wants to do. He's looking at it from one standpoint. Oh, we're going to drop interest rates to 1% or 2%, whatever it is. It's just like, no, that's not going to fix everything. Like, there is no easy fix at this stage of the game. Like, it's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and it's like somehow we're strange bedfellows with Jerome Powell now. It's like I don't know what I'm rooting for anymore. It's like I hate inflation. And so, it's like I want the rates to stay high, but then I'm also a Bitcoiner. So I want the money printer to go burr. And it's just like,
that's the Big Short meme where they're like pumped that they locked in these, shorts on these things on the housing market. They shorted like the A tranches, and they're going to make even more money than anybody else. And like Brad Pitt, who's Ben Rickert, just basically said, they were like jumping around, and he's like, stop. What does he say? Like, stop clapping or stop being happy or something like that. He's like, basically, if you're right, everyone suffers. Like, everybody else is going to be in an awful situation if you're right, which we think you're right. Stop celebrating, I think is what he says. And I just think, we're just in a situation where, none of this stuff is going to be as, due to the rate of inflation, all this kind of stuff. I'm just looking at this like, are people, due to the speed, due to 100 other things, like there's part of me that really just thinks people, even like the strongest Bitcoiners, are going to have to sell some of their Bitcoin sooner than they're thinking because of how bad things can get, pretty quickly with inflation, especially in like the last few stages of it. Let's see what else we have here. We've got the Kobayashi letter. Let's see what they have to say. Let me share this here. Our next tweet. Boom. I'll let you read this one, Jim.
Make it a little bigger.
Yeah. Jim got them old man eyes. Here we go.
All right. This is more kind of M2 money supply porn. U.S. M2 money supply surged 4.5% year over year in June to a record 22 trillion. This marks the 20th consecutive monthly increase. So if you scroll down, it just kind of shows what happened at the pandemic, where we've got the money supply increasing kind of, it looks like a linear rate, and then there's an inflection point, and it just almost goes straight up during COVID. Tapers off a little bit kind of in 2022, and then it actually contracts during 24, 25. Interestingly, Bitcoin is still going up during that time frame. And now the money supply is kind of going back up at a similar rate to what looks like was before the pandemic, which was still also bad. So, and then there's another tweet that this is classic tweet. The next one that I posted in the chat, which is just the overlay of the Bitcoin chart and M2 money supply. So it predicts we're supposed to be at 150 right now.
It is not a mystery. I'm looking for the chat here. Oh, Tim's back. I'll let him tell us why if he chooses to. Where what he just had to go deal with. Speaking of apocalyptic happenings,
I'm back.
Are your hands clean?
The children were eating sour grapes, and the father's teeth were set on edge. My hands are now clean.
And your Proverbs 31 wife is out busy.
Daughter,
Yeah.
she's
where is
grocery
this?
shopping, doing Proverbs 31 activities.
Let's go. Based. Where is this tweet you sent, Jim?
It was next in the Signal chat, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got.
Yeah, it's a
Was it
Simply
new in the Signal
Bitcoin.
chat? Simply Bitcoin. All right, let me see this one here.
Well, there's Vivek first, and then Simply Bitcoin after that one.
So Vivek, here we go. We'll do Vivek first. Share this tab instead. Boom.
Yeah.
So somebody,
Yeah,
Ubi,
people have probably been seeing this going around. Grok, apparently Grok 4 Heavy, the best model out there, or whatever, blah, 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 says that we're supposed to hit $400,000 Bitcoin by November 2nd, 2025. And then if you pull up the Simply Bitcoin M2 BTC overlay chart,
do I have that one? Where's that one?
it's right after this one.
Did I miss it? Let's see here.
This is horoscopes for Bitcoiners.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here it is.
It says,
Got it.
yeah.
Coming at you. Give us a preview, Jim. Here we go.
Yep. So classic, just they offset the chart by 10 weeks or whatever it is, and it makes it look like 100% correlation. And I guess this thing is saying, I guess if we zoom in there, it should be more like 160, 165 by November.
Yep.
Grok is disagreeing. Grok is more bullish.
Yep.
So
Which, yeah, I mean, and this is one of these things where people are like, oh, this is why, Bitcoin, it has nothing to do, like Bitcoin's not actually growing. It's literally just monetary supply. And it's like, yeah, like there's a sense in which a lot of it is monetary supply. But again, there still is real adoption going on as well. That also will affect this, I think, more as time goes on, as more people get into it. So
my take on all this would be to just like zoom out, stop staring at your screen.
Yeah.
Any sort of short-term price prediction, even months or a year out or something, is just nobody knows.
Yeah.
But we do know that the broad context, based on what we were talking about in the previous topic, is that they're going to print. They have to print.
Yeah.
They can't let it collapse. And so when you start talking about 5 and 10 year time frames, we know it's going up.
Yeah.
If you want to predict 6 months out, anybody's guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell me anything. You could literally tell me, tell me Coinbase collapsed, Coinbase holding a disgusting percentage of the Bitcoin held by a lot of these treasury companies, including MicroStrategy and other guys. You could tell me that something happened to them and we went into a 6-month absolute devastating bear market. Sure, I could believe it. You could tell me we had 2 Saudi birthdays. They all aped into $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin each, and now we're at $1 million Bitcoin in a month. Like, I'd believe any of it, just given the state that we're in and the incentives in play.
Yeah, Jordan's the guy on the roller coaster that's looking back with a deadpan look as the roller coaster is just.
That's right. I literally, so I tell people this and they don't believe me, but like, I'm trying to think. What you can see here? Stop sharing. Can you guys see? I don't know if you guys can see so I've got my Tron, or my block Tron over here, courtesy of our friend of the program, Chester Nay, what's his name? Ginger Sherpa on Twitter. He basically has this thing. It's similar to like a block clock. It's great. But literally the only reason that I check the Bitcoin price is when I walk into my office and see that there. Like I literally like don't look at the price. We got other stuff we're doing. And so, yeah, I just would really encourage you. Like, I mean, if it's something where you just find yourself checking the price, take it off your phone. Like, just, it really is one of these things where I have never been served by looking at the price. It's only served to, there's been periods where I have looked at it more, and it just doesn't help. It doesn't help me focus on the things that I need to be focusing on. So,
Are you still there, Tim?
I'm here.
yes, he's there. Oh no, did we lose Jim?
No, I'm back.
Okay. All right.
Jeff was actually making this point, and what Bitcoin did that he dropped was like, there's kind of 3 phases of, or people. There's like the no coiners, there's Bitcoiners, but they still check the price all the time.
Yeah.
So they're like, have this cognitive dissonance because they're living in both systems. And then there's the Bitcoiners that have sort of reached the escape velocity, and they're using Bitcoin as unit of account. And it's like, once you kind of get to that level, you realize that the price doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, it obviously, while the current system is still in place, if you want to buy a house or if you want to go do something with it, but generally the people that are checking the price all the time are people that are going to, take some profits off the table, which obviously when you get to phase 3 doesn't really make sense, because it's like, what are you going to take profits in?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, and the other thing that affects that, and friend of the program, American Huddle, has also talked a lot about this, is, you get to the point where, I mean, if you're like 2 cycles in, if you're more than 1 cycle in, the reality that you have very likely bought more Bitcoin than you'll ever be able to buy in the future. Like just get to the point where that's the reality. Like your initial buys, you'll never get anything close to them unless you found some crazy company that is, growing exponentially. If you found in the next Nvidia or something like that, then sure, you might be able to do that, or some other successful business. Like that's possible. But for the vast majority of people, after a cycle, or definitely after 2 cycles, you're not gonna be, you're not gonna be getting a meaningful amount more Bitcoin. It's just not gonna happen. And so like that also plays into this effect as well.
There's like a moral danger there that I've noticed, because when you do your initial buys, you're usually not as maxi as you will be. And so you're buying like smaller amounts. And then by the time you become more maxi, it's like you want to buy more of the thing, but you can actually only afford to buy less. And so it's just like, it's not good for the soul.
It is. I mean, this happens in a lot of ways too, right? You see older people, you can do this with time. Like if time is, think about time as a currency. The people, like when you're young, you just do whatever you want. You waste time, you do all kinds of stuff. And then when you get older, you just realize, oh my gosh, where did the time go? I could have done these things. I could have done all this kind of stuff. And you just realize that, you realize just how incredible and what an opportunity you had at different points of your life. And so, I think it is a sobering thing that ought to, spur us on. You can think about it with your kids, time with your kids.
I do want to shill Chester's product though. He's making more of them, and it is a really cool product. So you should go and support him. I think it's blocktron.io.
Is that what it is? Let's check it out. We'll pull it up here on the, let's see.
It's kind of got an 80s vibe to it. It's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, let's try this. Boom. Yeah, so Jim, so Chester made like a Founders Edition, and Jim grabbed one of those. Jim, what number did you get of the Founders Edition?
It's hard to remember. I may have gotten number 1. He was literally at the Thank God for Bitcoin barbecue over there vibe coding it, and I walked up and I was like, "What's going on?" And he just explained the project to me and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, can I buy one?" So I just got lucky.
He walked up and Chester's like, "Sure, you can buy one." And he's like, "What number do you want?" And he goes, "Can I have number 1?" And Chester's like, "Sure."
I think there was actually a 0. So I wish I had gotten 0, because I'm a computer science guy.
Yeah.
All computer science is 0-based indexing. But anyways, this actually ties in, since we're talking about vibe coding. If you want to bring up my vibe code tweet.
Oh yeah, let me see that. So go check these out. I don't think there's any available right now, but there will be soon.
He's making more.
So go do that. I believe like the regular, he's got, I see, this is the one that I wanted. There's one in each of the pub key bars. There's one in New York City. That was the original one. It's a bigger one. And then they're going to have one. I think he made another one already for the Swamp Key, which is the pub key bar in DC that's going to be opening soon. But go check those out. Keep your eyes peeled there.
Oh, do you know when that's opening?
It's not super long. Maybe end of the year or something.
I wonder if it's going to be before the conference. We should tell Ben. Also, the videographer in me is dying. Jordan's head is cut off, and Tim, you're off to the right.
How's this?
All right.
Is that better?
It's helping my autism, but you guys were not. We need to be lined up.
This happened to me the other day too. We're just. Right? All right,
I'm gonna go crazy.
Your vibe coding tweet. Jim, notorious hater of vibe coding. Jim, you gave it a whirl the other week. Yeah. And you tried to, what was it you actually tried to do?
So I was trying to vibe code up. There's been a couple of big feature requests on our backlog for like years that I've never gone for. One of them was doing like terrain follow. So the drone actually measures its altitude above the ground with a barometric sensor, and so it only knows how high it is above where it took off from. It's not like it's got a laser that points down and figures out its altitude. So what you do is you get like a digital elevation model that has the relative altitudes of the ground above sea level. And so what people want to do is they want to provide their own elevation models, because the ones that we have by default aren't the most accurate in every single area. So I subscribe to Super Grok 4, whatever, blah, 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 and OpenAI Codex. And my goal was to just say, hey, I want to add digital elevation model file import for these formats, and I want you to just go update all the code that you need to update to make that happen and allow the user to like add and remove the file. And it was just like a super high level request.
Don't tell us any information yet. Don't tell us how it went, because we want to share the tweet. Jim, so
Yeah.
here we are reporting back. How are things going with this thing here? With Jim's experiment, he shared a tweet about it. Let's get this. And here it is. Happy to report that both AIs were an epic failure. Humans are safe for now. So
yeah,
bad.
and then Cole
Cole,
says,
friend of the program, Cole. Shout out to Cole, one of the great upcoming tweeters of modern times. A poor workman blames his tools. Absolutely fantastic. What a tweet.
So I guess what he's saying is I'm not a great prompt engineer. So touche. I guess if I really wanted to lean into
that the
it,
tools work though.
yeah. Well, okay. So here's like the measured take between those two. So if I was willing to sit down and break the problem down further and use the AI as, hey, I want you to code this part of this feature, or I coded this up, can you check it for errors, or hey, can you just read this file format? It probably would have gotten me 90% of the way there on some of those things. And so, yes, I think that if you're a software engineer and you're not using AI, you are selling yourself short. And unfortunately, there's sort of a prisoner's dilemma here, right? And so if you don't do it, it's like the other person is going to do it. And so I think you do have to use AI in software engineering right now. But it's not to the point where it can do high level features that span multiple repositories on GitHub, and it can just figure out all the details. You kind of have to sit there and massage it. And so I think I probably would have had to spend like a week going back and forth and doing prompt engineering and copying the code and verifying it and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the feature on my own without AI probably would take a month. And so, yes, a week is better than a month, but a week is still a large amount of time that I don't have. So until it gets there, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. So again, that has been Jim Complains About AI Corner. It's one of our favorite recurring segments of the podcast. Anybody else? I'm trying to think. Do we have any other ones?
Well, I was talking with Tim about this. Tim, I don't know if you want to chime in, but just this idea that my generation might be the last generation of actual software developers, because again, we're like in this Goldilocks zone where I've got 20 years of software development experience. So I am best positioned to be able to take advantage of the tools as they are now. But then in the future, with kids that are like graduating right now, they are AI natives. And so they're never going to have the ability, because you have to use AI to keep up, right? And so they're never going to have the ability to spend 2 decades learning a craft. And so in 20 years from now, there's not going to be anybody like me that knows how to code. All they're going to know how to do is prompt engineer. Now, you can make the argument it doesn't matter, because by then the AI is going to be so good that like nobody's going to be prompt engineering anyways. They're just going to be having whims and saying, oh, I want to have this app that does this thing, and like that's enough. Like it could somehow figure it out, but I don't know. I think the jury's out on that one, and I think we're losing something. And it's not just in software development. I think it's across the board. And I think people are just, this whole idea of outsourcing your intelligence and all of your thoughts to the AI and just having it spoon feed you everything. Essentially just think about like your YouTube suggested videos feed, but for everything in your life.
Correct. There's a lot of people who are not going to they're not going to want to deal with the friction of fighting it. So they're just going to go along with it and end up being, again, just there's so many ways this can go bad. Let's check out our friend Aubrey Strobel, who has a similar tweet that kind of brings us full circle. Aubrey Strobel, being a millennial is like taking the last copter out of NAM. So again, this brings up Jim's point about there's going to be the potential for a lot of Generation Alpha and these people coming behind to be just super frustrated with the world that that's given to them, and this could get exponentially worse if that is the case. So yeah, be careful what you wish for, millennials, because you just might get it.
What do you think, Tim? Do you think AI people are just going to keep outsourcing more and more of their cognition to it, or it's going to be a reverse trend, like millennials don't let their kids have access to phones now?
It will probably be like however many years. I'm just old enough to where smartphones were not really a thing when I was in high school or even in college. They started coming out right after college. And it's like, I'm really thankful for that looking back. I had a little stupid flip phone that was really hard to text on.
Yep.
But, I don't know, it looks like we've gone through 20 years of parents just handing their kids iPads and smartphones and, all kinds of carnage everywhere because of it.
Yep.
And maybe, hopefully, who knows? I'm not sure. You still see a lot of kids glued to iPads at restaurants. Maybe people are being smart now and they're like, okay, maybe this wasn't such a good idea and we should hold off on handing kids to smartphones and social media. So I don't know. Maybe we'll go through something like that where you get through a couple of decades of people like, yeah, what's the big deal? No problem. And lots of damage done because of it. And people starting to say, wait a minute, maybe we should be careful about how much we hand this stuff over. I just read this tweet. Derek Thompson, I think he's a writer for The Atlantic. He was replying to somebody who was talking about, this huge problem now in college education. All of a sudden, everybody's cheating like crazy. You can't assign term papers anymore because kids just go home and cheat and use ChatGPT to write their essays for them. But how do you learn anything if you don't go through all the trouble of doing research and studying and writing? And his reply was, writing is not a second thing that happens after thinking. The act of writing is an act of thinking. Writing is thinking. Anyone who outsources their writing to LLMs will find their screens full of words and their minds emptied of thought. That's a good little phrase there, and terrifying to think about. I don't know, maybe we will have to learn the hard way why the liberal arts are called the liberal arts. Not liberal in the sense of, I'm going to go learn about Adam Smith or Hillary Clinton or something like that, but liberal in the old sense of being a free person, not a slave. The liberal arts are what you study when you have the luxury and the time and the wealth to think and to slow down. And maybe we're going to be just turning ourselves more and more into slaves, if not actually mentally. We won't know how to think anymore. We won't know how to understand anything. We won't know how to tell stories. We won't have stories to make sense of our lives, and we will be no better than slaves.
I can definitely corroborate that when it comes to programming. There's different levels of abstraction, and I can just be on an airplane for 8 hours and dream up a feature or something and think about the high level architecture. But until I got a keyboard in front of me, can actually sling the code, there's a different level of granularity and kind of detail that you can start fleshing out when you're actually typing at the keyboard and seeing the code come out in front of you. That just, you can't, there's no replacement. You have to actually go through the pain of writing it. I think you're muted, Jordan.
Yes, thank you for that. It is one of these things where there is no shortcut. You have to die in order death or life comes from death. Like this is what happened. Like this, so much of. I mean, there's a fantastic documentary about he's a farmer. It's like the lunatic farmer, Joel Salatin, where he just basically talks about the way that God has designed the world to work is things die. And then they basically turn into compost that basically helps other things grow out of their death. And so this also applies with things like Jim is talking about. God has designed it to where, we labor, we deny ourselves, we die to ourselves, and we set our minds or our bodies on a task, and out of that death springs life. And so I think that, this is to act like, and to think it would be desirable to escape thinking, to be freed from thinking, is really just making yourself a slave to either wittingly and you know who your enslavers are, or just unwittingly you're just becoming a mindless a mindless drone. And it brings up, who's this? I believe it's G.K. Beale. Is it Tim who wrote "You Are What You Worship"? And so and so you've got this. I mean, I've had this realization of, I'm on my phone, and I'm working on something, and one of the kids is calling me, and I'm just like calling, or I'm like focused here, and then basically they'll come over and like they'll just basically, hey dad, can you come do this thing? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And so it's literally like, it's so easy for us to become like these devices. Like, it's easy for me to become like a phone or become like a computer, where you're like, you can't hear. It's like when somebody comes up and touches your keys, or pushes a button on you, then you activate, and then you're able to. And so it's just like, how much more as these choices that we're making compound, it's just like, man, this can get to a really, really dystopian, even more unsustainable situation than the one that we're in. Again, the Lord is very kind, though. We do have lots of examples of things getting to the point where they're, unsustainable, and the Lord just kind of pulls the plug. So we've got Tower of Babel like moments, a number of them all throughout history. And so this, is just comforting to think about that even in the worst case, God is still more committed to his own glory and our good than we'll ever be committed to anything. And so we can trust him to bring about the required happenings to get us on a more sustainable path. Well, I guess that was such a compelling point that no one has anything else to say. I'll give any of you guys any other tweets. Tim, anything? I know you had family in town this week. Any other things that impacted you on your end? Oh,
Muted.
You're muted, Tim.
I came across this quote again by W.H. Auden, 20th century poet. He said, and this is related to what we're just talking about. He said, "What fascinates and terrifies us about the Roman Empire is not that it finally went smash, but that it managed to last for 4 centuries without creativity, warmth, or hope." I mean, kind of a depressing thought, but you can go a long time kind of just surviving as a society in a very dark kind of way without hope. And, we hope and we pray that God brings light into our world, most of all through the gospel, but also, through his kindness and his mercy, through more general revelatory things like Bitcoin, through things turning around socially and politically and culturally, so that people suffer less. But yeah, it's sobering to remember that these things can go badly for a long time before they fall apart.
I can't think of a better note to end on than be out and pilling yourself. This is put down your orange pills. You've probably taken plenty if you're watching this, and go out and pill yourself. Tim, Jim, appreciate you guys. Grateful for your continued contributions in the Bitcoin space, having all kinds of fantastic conversations with all kinds of interesting people all over the place. We look forward to, again, we're trying to figure out a timing, like a rhythm for you guys that works. Things are getting tricky. So we'll figure that out. We'll report back, and we'll see you on episode 24 this coming Tuesday of To the Unknown Pod.
Thanks, everyone.